All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kara, for those of you who haven't met me before. This was a passion project of like wanting to celebrate the amazing books people are putting out. So I hope you have as much fun with it as I have. Structure for today, we're going to hear from one of our sponsors, going to kick it off with our 10 minutes per author as they get to share their journey to becoming authors, their book content, where to find the book, who it's for, all that good stuff. Because most of the books, as I've looked at them, are going to be relevant, if not for you as a clinician, relevant to the clients you might serve. So, an opportunity to learn about some of the other books that you might be adding to the stack on your nightstand of future books to read, right? Well, there he is. Cool. So, I'm Kara. I'm a published author myself, passionate about writing, love writing books. Currently, I'm sort of addicted. So, I do envision seeing this kind of community happening more than just today. So when I reached out to these amazing authors, I said, I want to cultivate a couple of things. I want to cultivate community. I want people to have a chance to share what they've written. And I want people to just know more about what it's like to be a published author. For some of you, that's something you're aspiring to be or want to do or have it on your bucket list to accomplish. So my hope is with these 10 folks, you'll hear their tips, their ideas, their experiences, and leave feeling motivated and inspired to write, because you all have a book in you, at least one. Some of you have written multiple books, even as we're talking. So I'm going to see if Rich, are you there as our sponsor to introduce yourself and jump in? I know you have some technical stuff going on. Any questions from this group before we jump in? Anything you want to know? I'm going to make sure I put my chat up too. Again, our Dropbox has all the things for folks who want to access all the tips and info on our sponsors. Put that here again. Oh, we lost Rich. That's not going to help us, is it? There we go. Try again. Now the link is working for all of you, so that's the good news. There's Rich. Hey, Rich.
Here I am. Sorry for technical issues.
No worries. I want to make you a co-host so that you can share your screen if that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, awesome.
So Rich is our first sponsor. He's part of what is making this possible for all of you to join us for these 2 hours. And I've actually personally worked with Rich and his company for lots of things when it comes to being a published author. So I'm excited for him to share a little more with you.
Cool. Well, Kara, thanks so much for having us. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Again, I apologize for the technical errors, but we seem to be all they seem to be all up and running now. Hold on one. Okay, well, my name is Richard Wolf. I am one half of the team that is Wolf Design and Marketing, along with my lovely wife, Victoria. We are all things for authors, everything from award-winning cover and interior design, ebook formatting, author websites, Amazon A+ content, which we're going to talk a little bit more about what that is, marketing materials, bookmarks, one-sheets, posters, banners, so much more, video book trailers, and then full self-publishing support services. Be sure and go and check out our portfolio at wolfdesignandmarketing.com. One of the things that I wanted to share with you guys today is Amazon, or KDP Direct Publishing, has been busy over the summer, tweaking their account, making things better for authors, a better user experience all the way around. However, in doing that, they've created some things that changed in accounts and created kind of a mess for some authors out there. So one of the things I wanted to do was let you guys know some things you should be checking quarterly in your Amazon accounts, because as they tweak things that were originally in the count change, such as your categories. They recently updated from 2 categories that you can select in your KDP account to 3 categories. In that process, they deleted some categories that weren't as popular. They added new ones. So your categories in your individual Amazon account may be messed up. So it's a good time to go in there and check. Do you have 3 categories selected? And are they the right 3 categories? And are they specific to your book and your genre? So be sure and go and check out your categories. Next is expanded distribution. And expanded distribution is kind of Kindle's or Amazon's wholesale arm. And one of the biggest examples of this, if your book is available on Amazon and also available on barnesandnoble.com, for example, and Amazon is doing the fulfillment, when they did some upgrades around July, early August timeframe, many authors had the little box for expanded distribution unchecked. And what that did was it pulled their books out of Barnes and Noble online. So it's another good time to go in and check and see if you had the expanded distribution box checked, is it still checked for your book? Because if it's not, and you were in Barnes and Noble online, you could no longer be in Barnes and Noble online. And again, I'm recommending you check these things quarterly as Amazon potentially increases the user experience for authors. It is creating some issues. Third is pricing. Again, around that August timeframe, we had a number of issues where authors' prices seemed to increase for no reason. Increase higher than what the authors had set in their accounts. That creates a problem if you have a barcode on the back of your book that has your price embedded into it. If you don't know, you can sell your book for less than the price that's on the back of the barcode, but Amazon has a problem with you selling the price higher than the barcode that's on the back of the book. So go in, check your pricing on your product page. If it looks different, go into your account and make sure you set your pricing that it's correct. And finally is the product description. I've gotten calls recently from authors where their product descriptions on their product page were misformatted. So things that were italicized, like the author's name or the title, lost italics or bold, or there was weird formatting in the paragraph structure. So go in and double check from time to time that your product description is correct. These 4 things seem to be the main 4 things that change and cause problems when Amazon or Kindle Direct makes changes to the user experience on their website. The next thing I wanted to do is give you guys kind of an ABC of marketing and some of the things that we do. And ABC, for many people out there, is always be closing. It's kind of an old sales tactic, but we've updated that for authors to mean always building community. More than focusing on book sales, we really want authors to be focusing on building their communities, which in turn will lead to book sales. Amazon has created this summer a new great free marketing program called A+ Content. A+ Content is graphics that can be shown kind of on your main product page in between your product description and kind of recommended books that Amazon offers. There's lots of graphic potential there to sell your books. It's been shown that books that actually have A+ content sell 10 to 12% more books than those that don't have A+ content. Next is your Amazon bestseller ranking, which is what ABSR stands for. Your ABSR on your account, if you've never paid attention to it, is part of the Amazon algorithm, and it really determines that how hard Amazon works for you to promote your book. And in these 2 examples here, you can see the book on the top has an Amazon bestseller ranking of 524,872. And there's the 3 categories that this book is listed in. One of the things to note here
Rich,
is
we can't see your PowerPoint if there's something you're trying to show us.
You can't see the PowerPoint?
No, I only see the Zoom link that you are on your web page right now. Try again.
Is it there now?
Yes, it is. There you go. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. So The ABR, Amazon bestseller ranking. How hard is Amazon working for you to promote your book? The top one, a ranking of 524,872. Any Amazon bestseller ranking under 1 million,
Well, we lost Rich, but I will make sure to get his content for you and put it in the Dropbox later. So sorry
yeah,
about that. I'm not sure
I
what
think
happened.
I'm
There you are.
I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I will get this wrapped up here.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, an Amazon bestseller ranking on the bottom one here, 2,532,000. It is obviously, it only has 18 rankings as well. So you can see Amazon's not going to work as hard to sell a book that's ranked number 2 million versus a bestseller ranking of a book that's going to be ranked 524,000. So the question becomes, what can you do and how can you increase your Amazon bestseller ranking? One of the great ways to do this, and Kara has done this personally with her book, is the Amazon bestseller campaign. The campaign is designed to, one, build your community, two, hit number one in as many categories as possible, and three, get your reviews up. Like over here, 18 ratings versus 469 ratings. That's something that the Amazon bestseller campaign can do for you. So again, thank you guys for being here. I greatly apologize for the technical issues that we're having, but I wanted to offer everybody the chance for a free discovery call to talk about some of those issues that you might be having with your KDP account, how we can update them for you and with you, and some of the marketing opportunities. Be sure and go to our website, check out our portfolio of books that we've done and some of our marketing ideas. You can also check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and you can always go to my Calendly link directly to schedule an event. And with that, Kara, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. Rich is a wealth of knowledge, so I hope you all take him up on that discovery call. It's a whole different language to navigate self-publishing, and he is an expert in all the things. So for those of you who have already self-published or plan to self-publish, Rich is your person to figure all some of that out. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and move into our author presentations. First, we have Kate King kicking us off and telling us about her upcoming book and the fact that she's already published a book. So Kate, when you're ready, we're ready to hear from you.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here with you. I'm Kate King. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a board certified art therapist. And I previously published this book, The Authentic Mother. This was published back in 2014. It's a creatively based companion book for new parents. And this was sort of my initiation into the publishing and writing world. And it was mostly by accident because I didn't really intend to publish this book. It started out as just a kind of a journal for me while I was in the period of postpartum with my first child. And one thing led to another, and it became a published book. So I learned a lot of things since then, and I'm currently in the process of publishing another book that's actually coming out November 1st. I don't have the hard copy of it, but this is the cover of it. It's called The Radiant Life Project. And it is about essentially everything I know as a clinician and from doing my own personal work in kind of a how-to masterclass for people who are ready to start navigating their own inner work and exploring some of the things in their life that might not be aligned, might be maladaptive and unhealthy for them. And it goes through the categories of brain sciences to art therapy to Buddhist psychology and internal family systems, and kind of just this really robust, eclectic connection of all the things that I do in practice. And this book is with a publisher named Rowman and Littlefield, who I actually found through Kara. And have had a really wonderful experience with. And so I've experienced the self-publishing and the traditional publishing experiences both, and they're pretty different. And it's been a great learning experience. And a bit of a wild ride. And I'm very excited for my book to come out. I think it'll start shipping out next month. And they did give me a discount code. Should I share that, Kara?
Sure, why not? People might
May
be
as
interested
well.
in this book.
So, if you want the discount, it's 30% off, and it's only being offered at the publisher's website, which is www.rowman.com. And then you can search the Radiant Life Project. And when you go to checkout, you can put in the code RLFANDF30. So it's RLFANDF30. And it gets you 30% off. And I'm trying to just create a ripple effect with this work, really trying to help to spread the resources for health and mental health and really deep well-being far and wide, trying to help our communities and our clients and also kind of humanity at large. Hopefully this feels accessible for people, and I'm grateful to be here to share it with you.
Yes, so I actually have had the privilege of getting a first glance at Kate's book, and I love the style. It's very comforting, it's very approachable. Kate, you kind of already alluded to this, but like it seems like this book can reach a bunch of different kinds of people. Would you say that's true, just based on the fact that it is an integration of neuroscience and skills and mindfulness and lots of cool stuff?
Yeah, that's the intention. And I think there's also an intention with this book that you can return to it at different times of life. And there might be different sections that resonate differently depending on where a person's at. And maybe something doesn't quite sync with your story in the moment, but then later on you come back and you're like, oh, that piece about relationships, or that piece about narratives, that piece about brain science. So it's my hope that it can just be kind of a coffee table resource for people.
Absolutely. So of the experiences, because you are one of our people who's had both self-publishing and a traditional publisher, can you, I'm going to put you on the hot seat, Kate. Do you want to share any of the pros and cons or what you liked or not liked for folks that are thinking about this?
Sure, of course. So I would say generally I have much preferred the traditional publishing route. The self-publishing route felt scary to me because I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't have someone like your sponsor who is, a kind of support person for that. I was really navigating it on my own. And so I felt like I wasn't really sure how it was all going to come across. I didn't have the professional backing for what I was doing. And that has been a real pro for working with Rowman and Littlefield, is they have all of these incredible resources and teams that know way more than I do and can guide me and support me. So that would be one piece. Another piece, I guess one of the pros of self-publishing is that you are in full creative control of everything. And with traditional publishing, you have to give up some creative control. And I haven't really felt too pinched by that. But there are moments where I feel like my publishing team is working on something and I have no idea what they're working on. They haven't told me if the book's going out for reviews or if the audiobook is trying to be sold. Like, I don't know. And sometimes they're busy and they don't respond to emails. And so at times I do feel a little bit out of the inner circle of the planning and design and formatting and all of those things. But in the grand scheme, they always do pass everything by me for approval before they move forward with finals. But that was definitely different, just not having all of the control.
Any questions for Kate as she's kind of in the hot seat? Oh, yep. Silver Linings has a question for you. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not on camera. This is Samantha from Silver Linings. And Kate, I just had a question regarding the traditional publishing route versus the self-publishing route. How difficult is the traditional publishing route? In my limited understanding, I understand that you need to apply to multiple literary agents, and the literary agents are the ones that work with the publishing houses. And it's a very difficult process. Can you just speak a little to that on the difficulty of traditional publishing versus the self-publishing?
Absolutely. I will say that when I kind of took this path. I intended for this new book to be published with a traditional publishing house. So that was really the direction I was headed. And I had a lot of people in my life who were really worried about me putting myself out there and being disappointed because they thought the chances for getting a publisher was going to be so low and I was really going to be heartbroken. And so I had a lot of people in my life who were kind of naysaying at the time, but I just chose not to listen to them. I don't have a literary agent, and I think if you can get one, it's certainly a benefit, especially if you're in the world in a big way in the media, or if you're on big stages speaking, on social media with a lot of followers. Literary agents will find you and they will ask you to work with them. But if you're smaller, like I was, a literary agent can actually be harder to secure than a publisher because they are very picky with the specific standard of how many followers you need to have to qualify to work with them, or, you know, what your platform looks like. It's all about platform, and that equates to followers. So I started to do a major push on my social media and just the way that I put myself out in the world. When I started writing this book, I put daily reels out on social media, lots of posts, and that's a lot, putting out daily. So you really have to carve out time for that. I put myself on big stages. I put myself on podcasts. I really worked hard doing a lot of unpaid work to build this platform. And it's like the turtle running the race against the hare. It is slow and steady. You know, I think that we have an illusion that maybe your social media account will increase by hundreds and thousands as soon as you start posting regularly. But in my situation, it has not been that. It has been very slow and steady. So I still don't have a literary agent. I would love one. Hoping that this new book helps bring me in contact with them. And I looked onto different publishers' pages to see which publishers will accept unsolicited manuscripts, because not all will. Some only accept inquiries from agents. So I had a list of several publishers that accepted unsolicited manuscripts that were aligned with the mental health, the well-being, the spirituality kind of lens that I was working through. And then oftentimes they will have an outline for their specific desire for a book proposal on their submissions page of their website. And most of these are pretty similar. Once I started to look, I noticed a lot of repeating questions. And so I took the most complex proposal request and I finished that to completion. And then I kind of copied and pasted and shifted things for other publishers. But it's like an 80-page document. It's a really involved document about who you are as an author and what makes your book amazing and how many followers you have and your first 3 chapters. And so I would say that it could take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to really do a good job on a book proposal. So don't get disheartened about publishing houses. I think you should try. I think everyone should give it their best shot. And I think sometimes it does take a few submissions and a few rejections. And I just really think if you believe in your book and you keep pushing it out into the world, what you want also wants you and will be looking for you too. So keep going.
Beautiful, Kate. So I know we're wrapping up with Kate's time. I want to take an opportunity. Every author has graciously been willing to raffle off a copy of their book. So what I'm doing behind the scenes for those of you with us right now is I'm grabbing a random number generator and I'm basically picking based on where you are in the order on my screen, and you either win the book or you wait for the next one. So for Kate's book, actually it's Shane. Shane, congratulations. You're getting a copy of Kate's new book that she's got coming out. So make sure you direct message me, Shane, in the chat so I can get the right email to connect you to Kate, and you guys can take it from there. Thank you so much, Kate. Next, we have Whitney coming in to talk to us about her book. So she has multiple books as well. Whitney, when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Whitney Frost. I'm an LPC in Denver. I have a private practice called Peaceful Journeys and a group practice at the Riley Center for Hope and Healing. I specialize in treating women with borderline personality disorder as well as bipolar disorder. And I also work with mothers going through pregnancy loss, infertility, and the postpartum journey. My group practice focuses on postpartum, pregnancy, infertility, pregnancy loss, all of that. And we have 27 providers that offer a holistic approach as well. My publishing journey was very different than I think most people's. I actually had a publisher reach out to me to write both of my books last year. So I published the Borderline Personality Disorder Journal last year, and then the Borderline Personality Disorder Journal last year. Both of these books are considered treatment journals for clients, not so much clinicians, that offer more guided prompts and exercises and tracking activities for folks that may not necessarily have a diagnosis or may have a diagnosis of BPD or bipolar. And it offers skills both from a DBT standpoint and a CBT standpoint to help with the stress tolerance, emotion regulation, interpersonal skills, as well as mood tracking to help maybe take to their therapist and say, you know, I've been tracking these things over the last few days. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing, and help bring more therapeutic meat to sessions, as well as do work at home. My publishing experience was different because someone from Callisto Media reached out to me for both of my journals and said, we have this project. We found you through the internet and saw that you're someone who specializes in this. Is this something you would like to do? And my first one with the BPD journal, I was very skeptical. I thought it was a scam. And I had my first meeting, found out it was legitimate. And while I was in the midst of writing that one, they came to me with a second one for the Bipolar Disorder Journal. And so I was balancing both of these books at the same time with a lot of pressure and a lot of really quick deadlines. The Bipolar Disorder Journal, they gave me a 60-day deadline to pump out. So it was a lot of work very, very quickly. And while I didn't feel like I had a lot of creative control with some of the aspects of the journal, I had a lot of therapeutic control because the people that were asking me to write this had no therapeutic insight. I remember at one point they wanted me to speak about medication in the journal, and I pushed back and said, that's not in my scope. And they're like, okay, we'll take that part out. So they gave me a lot of therapeutic control where they sent me a general guideline of this is the stuff we want you to be talking about in these journals, go for it. And I had benchmarks to be turning stuff in. And the creative control was lost more like in these covers. You know, I would never choose this cover, definitely not choose this cover. I remember the very first cover they sent me for this one, it was two faces. And I was very concerned about that for the audience may be confusing that with DID and like, this is bad. No, please do something else. And so they listened to me in some regards and they changed it. But overall, they didn't listen. And after I turned in my material, it was gone. I had no say so. And then randomly one day I got a box of books on my doorstep. And I'm like, oh, these are my books. What do I do with them? And so at this point, I received a letter a couple of weeks ago that Callisto, as a group, has filed bankruptcy. And yes, you know that. So they have been bought out by someone else. So I don't know what is happening. I know that previously my books were available Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Target, Walmart, anywhere online, not necessarily in person. And so I like to check on Target when I go in, and I've never found my book, even though it was published a year ago, but you can definitely find it online. And so normally I suggest these books to my clients frequently. So if you're working with people with BPD or bipolar, they're a fabulous resource and more of a companion for therapy, not necessarily here, go work on this. I've had clients use my journals during TMS treatment as a means of having a prompted journal to work through while going through TMS. That has been fabulous, and I've received that feedback from psychiatrists before. Yeah, those are my books. Hera, did I hit all the spots? Yes, it's been very fascinating. So as I'm listening to other people, I'm like, that wasn't my experience at all.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the purpose of this, right? Is to say each person's journey is unique, and
absolutely,
based on your experience, Whitney, with a company that's now filed bankruptcy and is going through an overhaul, I'm sure you have lots of ideas or tips for the folks on this call who might be trying to partner with somebody, but specific to like vetting your partnership, what would you say to this audience of who would they work with?
It was not a bad experience. They have come to me to write another book, and I turned down the opportunity just because I didn't like the idea. Honestly, wasn't something I was interested in. But I think if they come to you with an idea that is interesting to you and you see the outline, it was not a bad experience. It was just a very fast-paced experience, especially when you're running a practice. It's a lot to take on.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Christy in the chat is asking where they found you.
They found me through my website. They said that they find most of their authors through social media, through website. They look for people that are subject matter experts. And so they find you and seek you to write journals, books, cookbooks, things like that, based on having a high media presence as a subject matter expert. No, there were no royalties. I was paid a lump sum upon finishing the book. I finished it, I turned in my manuscript, and then I was paid for writing it, and that was it.
So you probably saw the genuine reactions of a lot of us here when you said there's no royalties. That's probably a tip for people, have a royalty.
And it was no life-changing amount of money, I'll tell you that.
Oh gosh, this is so helpful, right? To people who are like, how do I start this journey? So I'm hearing an echo from Kate to you about social media presence, having a specialty, showing up authentically online so people can find you and be clear who you work with. So that might be another tip that I'm hearing from you, Whitney.
Absolutely. And I would love to be able to do something that is more authentic to my voice and to my passion in the future.
Absolutely. We have time for one more question for Whitney. Does anyone have another question for her? Putting her in the hot seat. So far, so good. Okay, well, I'm doing my random number generator behind the scenes, and our winner of one of the journals that Whitney has created is Alex, my good friend Alex Castrocroy. If you're on here, hooray! Congrats! Thank you, Whitney, for sharing your authentic experience and just the roller coaster of things. Awesome. All right, up next we have our powerhouse Rebecca Case with us. She has just launched a book. I believe it was earlier this year. I'm kind of in a time warp. But Rebecca, when you're ready, we'd love to hear your story.
Hey, everybody. I'm Rebecca Case. I'm an LCSW, and I also own the company Case & Co., which is an EMDR training group. I wrote Polyvagal Informed EMDR, which is a neuro-informed approach to healing. So it's a kind of an academic, very niche book for EMDR therapists that integrates polyvagal and EMDR theoretical frameworks into one cohesive, kind of approachable framework for EMDR therapists. And this just came out in May. I started writing it. It took me about 2 years from start to like final manuscript and when it actually came out. I published this with W.W. Norton, and I have 2 other pieces that I'm working on right now. I'm also writing a self-help book called The Polyvagal Solution with New Harbinger. And then I'm also working on the applied polyvagal flip chart with PESI. So I have the experience of working with 3 different publishers and writing 3 very different types of content. Writing this, I'm going to drop a curse word, but this was a total mindfuck. Like writing an academic book, I call it like I visit the mindfuckery. And it's like this place that I experience inside where like you have to reference everything and you have to be so thoughtful about, you know, having relevant references and books and articles. And, you know, you get into this place of like, do I need to cite that the sky is blue? Do I need to cite that? You write something down and you ask yourself, are those my words or are those someone else's words? And oh my God, am I going to get sued for plagiarism? You know, it's like, it is kind of a terrifying experience, honestly. And I got into it and I like multiple times, I was like, what was I thinking? Why did I think this was a good idea? It was the hardest thing I've ever self-imposed on myself. So when I was in the mind effery multiple times writing this book, I had to work really hard on creating like structure and ritual for writing and taking breaks so I would get out of that deep end of that pool. And, you know, like, okay, I need to write for 2 hours and then go for a walk. And then I need to like take an hour off and just take a bath. So I had to do a lot to regulate myself because my nervous system just, it was such intense, focused, you know, intellectual time. Writing a self-help book is a very freeing experience because I'm like, I can just kind of say what I need to say and I don't have to cite everything. And they don't want you to have a bunch of citations actually when you write a self-help book. And then creating a flip chart is like a walk in the park. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I could do this in my sleep. So in a way, I'm grateful that I started with such an academic neuroscience-based book. This is part of Norton's Interpersonal Neurobiology series, which is a little kind of like, whoa, holy cow, how did I get there? And so writing a self-help book or creating a flip chart is just like, whew, this is a breeze, so much easier. Working with 3 different publishers has also really taught me that publishers can be very different and also kind of the same. So working with publishing groups is a very strange and bamboozling world, especially coming from the psychotherapy world. There is little to no overlap in how our professions work and how we relate and how we interact with each other and how we communicate. The publishing world is not trauma informed. I found it very ironic to be writing about polyvagal theory, which talks a lot about the importance of context and choice and connection. And like none of that is present when you publish a book. There's like no context. So when I was working with Norton, I just felt so confused about what was expected of me, what I should expect from my publisher, what I should expect from my editor. There was very little communication back and forth. I would send off my chapters and they'd send them back and say, looks great. And I'm like, really? This is the first time I've written a book. You don't have any feedback. I find that kind of hard to believe. Please give me feedback. I was also required to work with Deb Dana as part of my contract because Norton also publishes Deb and Stephen Porges's text. So they wanted to make sure we were all saying consistent things. So I didn't have choice in working with Deb Dana, which I mean, honestly, I was like super excited to be able to access her. But that was also like, what is this relationship supposed to look like? How do I respect her time? You know, does she even want to be reading my book? This woman is so busy. So that was really confusing. I didn't get a lot of information about, like, I still haven't gotten information about how the book is doing, how the book is selling. I had to reach out recently to be like, when do I get paid royalties? You know, because they're just not very clear about any of that. And it was a very frustrating experience, honestly. Working with New Harbinger approached me probably about a year ago and started courting me. And so they worked really hard to build a relationship with me to the point that, you know, that there was this relational bond with the person who kind of found me and was courting me, to the point that I was like, I kind of feel bad saying I won't write this book for you because we had built such a relationship. And that's a better experience, I will say. New Harbinger is all employee owned. So your publisher and your editors have a little bit of a different kind of skin in the game than maybe another publishing company where people don't really have any ownership in the company. They've been very trauma informed in the sense of they're very thorough in reviewing information with me. They're really quick to follow up and answer my questions. And my editor is just really nice. And I just really feel comfortable with them. So I have enjoyed that. And then PESI is just, PESI is a huge group and they, do a lot of training. They've also been much more pleasant to work with, I would say. And I'm not saying this to knock Norton. Norton is a huge publishing company and is a really big stronghold in the field of academia. And so it feels like you're in the field of academia working with Norton, which is often not a very safe place, right? It doesn't feel very warm and fuzzy and safe and kind of clear. So those have been some of my kind of takeaways of, wow, working with different publishing companies is a very different experience who you work with. In the beginning, I wasn't even sure how to negotiate a contract. I was just so thrilled that I was going to publish a book with Norton. I just signed it. I didn't even have my lawyer really look at it. I was just so excited, and it's fine. Like nothing bad happens there. But in retrospect, I wish I would have advocated for myself more. So my imposter syndrome was just so triggered of, oh my gosh, how did I get here? I fooled them into thinking I know what I'm talking about. Let me sign this before they rescind their offer, So I really advocated for myself with New Harbinger and with PESI, and pretty much everything I asked for, I got. So that was also a real learning lesson of, the worst thing you can do is ask and they'll say no, but at least you asked. And I think that as therapists and mental health clinicians, we're not really trained in negotiating skills, and it can feel uncomfortable to us sometimes. So that was definitely a learning curve for me. I got my lawyer involved for my second contract, but that ended up being so expensive to have him review contracts and things. I just more learned some things from him to negotiate than my third contract. And I felt very capable by the time I negotiated my third contract, and I got feedback of, we can tell you know what you're doing. Like, oh, good. We're faking it every moment, So those are some of my takeaways. What did I ask for? I asked for a higher rate for royalties, and gosh, there's so many pieces in those contracts. I can't even remember everything I asked for. Some of it was just little changes in terms, like getting approval from me on certain things. And a big one that I asked for was having say in the cover. Like that was really important. I did get to have a say in the cover with Norton, and I really liked this cover. They really asked for my feedback when we were designing the cover, and they asked me a lot of questions. So I felt really good about that. I did like the team that I worked with to finalize the manuscript with Norton. They were very engaged. And PESI and New Harbinger so far have been really great to work with as well. But those are some things to think about if you sign a contract of, maybe getting some one-on-one time with a lawyer to just understand the legal mumbo jumbo in there, and knowing what you might want to ask for in regards to royalties. And royalties can be really different depending on, like, I have different royalties for audio versus international versus, just like people straight up bought the book off of Norton, or people bought the book off of like Barnes and Noble. So your royalties can significantly vary depending on how your product was purchased. So I think those are some of my big takeaways and things to share. I think the biggest thing is, depending on what type of book you're writing, if you're writing a really academic book, be prepared to get super cozy with your imposter syndrome again. And really think about how you're going to take care of yourself and keep yourself regulated throughout the process, because it's super bamboozling to your nervous system when you get in there. It's just such intense, pointed focus for such a long period of time. It's a lot.
So relatable, Rebecca. You have such a wealth of knowledge, having 3 different publisher experiences. We have time for maybe one very quick question for Rebecca before she signs off and our next speaker comes in. Looks like Ilan has one for you.
Yes, good ways to reset between projects. So my biggest piece is when writing a real academic book, I had to set aside chunks of time to just sit down and immerse myself in it. Writing a self-help book, I can spend a couple of hours working on that and feel fine. But the academic book, you just get so into the intellectual and your references, and you're going to go down rabbit trails, and you're going to have moments of existential crises. Right? So So I set aside multiple weeks throughout the year where it was like, I'm just writing. And often I had to leave. I had to leave my home because my husband and my pets are very wonderful, but they're also very distracting. So I had to go and just like rent an Airbnb in a really quiet space and sit down and write. And when I did that, I would schedule, I'm going to write for 2 hours and I'm going to take 30 minutes to walk. I'm going to go back and I'm going to write for 2 hours and I'm going to take 30 minutes to eat lunch. And then I'm going to get back to eat. So I had to schedule myself in chunks because before you know it, you've been writing for 3.5 hours. You're totally blown out. You're all upside down. You can't make sense of anything. And it can be hard to recover at that point. So that's one of my tips. Playing music was really important. Jazz and classical music are always playing when I'm writing. I have candles lit. I have really good food. I tend to really crave pancakes when I'm writing. I just like need a lot of carbs. My body just needs that sugar fuel. So get like your favorite foods and snacks. If you're chewing when you're writing, it really helps your brain, right? Just like when you chew gum and you're trying to concentrate. So I always had to have something to chew on, like dried mangoes were one of my favorites, and then like small chocolate candies because I could just eat the whole bag. So those are like some kind of silly but really important tips for me anyway, that help turn those writing weekends into really effective and productive time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sounds like this one resonated with folks. I know we need to move on to our next speaker. So there's another question here you might want to answer in the chat, Rebecca, if you feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
Tanya, you are a winner of Rebecca's book. So congratulations on getting a copy. I'll get you guys connected by email. Next up, we have Kathy Wilson as our next author and speaker. Thank you so much.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for having me here today, Kara. Hey, Claudia, I saw that wave. So I'm here to talk about I have 3 books that I've published. They are all self-published. So again, a little bit different story than what we've had so far. And I would say for the most part, all 3 were a pretty good experience for me. The first 2 were better than the third because the first 2, I had someone helping me with the design and formatting of the ebook. And by the time the third one came around, I thought, I got this. I can do this. And that was wrong. Just FYI, that was very wrong for me. So I won't do that again. I will get help again. And so those experiences taught me a lot too about myself. So for instance, the self-publishing route does give you more control, and I can't confirm or deny whether that's, soothing an issue of mine. But that is a factor for sure, that you do have a lot more control over what the cover looks like, and all the aspects of what this book looks like and the information that you present. And so that was clearly important to me, especially on the third one when I decided to do it all myself. But that's not necessarily going to serve me going forward or anybody else. The 3 books, each one came out of a passion, we'll say. So circumstance would happen in my practice and my client demographics, life happening to me. So the first book was One Last Act, which is the one that's about writing your professional will for yourself and your practice in case something were to happen to you and you couldn't practice anymore. And that one was a result of a couple of colleagues suddenly dying, and they didn't have a professional will in place. And one of them I was heavily involved with, and it was chaos. And as a result, it just became super important to me to share that message with people and help other clinicians, because I had so much trouble writing my own. And in that process, I thought, what is going on here? And so I started diving into it more and more and ended up with enough content for a book, but I didn't have a book planned at that time. At that time, I just thought, I'm going to do some in-person workshops. And we didn't even call it in person at that time because it was before 2020. but I did workshops for colleagues around the Denver area. And from that, it just became apparent that there was so much more to share. And that eventually evolved into One Last Act, the book. The other two were similar. So Boundaries of Steel was the second one that I wrote. And that one, I started groups first about helping people heal after toxic relationships. And eventually, the outline that I wrote up for us to follow in the group, that evolved into an entire book. And so at first, that book was just a workbook that we used for the groups. And eventually that became popular all by itself out there as a book to help people heal from toxic relationships. And then the third one was definitely a passion from before, but was becoming, I don't know what the word is, but it's about being scammed. So the book is titled The Emotional Impact of Being Scammed and How to Recover. And that came from several clients that I had years before that really struggled to find any resources for themselves out there on the internet or anything at all. They really struggled to find resources. And I thought, okay, I'll put something together and put a page on my website about that. And that became super popular. And I started getting a lot of phone calls from people who had been scammed. And the need was so great. I eventually wrote that book and got that out there. And now it's several online courses too. So sometimes the books turn into multiple things, right? Workshops, courses, etc. And so one piece, the tip that I shared was essentially write the fun parts first. And I wanted to share a little bit more about what that means to me. I really struggled early in the writing process. Writer's block, being stuck, however you see that. I had a really hard time with that at first until I realized that I was trying to write in a linear way. I was trying to write chapter 1 and then chapter 2 and so on. And what I really needed to do was write the parts that were important to me first, because that engaged me, that created flow. And I had to keep a notepad next to me all the time I was writing, because other ideas about what needed to be included popped up. And a natural organization to the book emerged from all of that. The longer I wrote about the important pieces, it became easier to write the less important pieces. They're all important, but there are the things that really touch you, right? And so that it evolved so much easier once I did that. So that's a thing that really worked for me to get past that blank page, that initial moment where you say, I don't even know where to start. You say that to yourself. And so that, along with the bigger picture and the process of self-publishing and publishing in general, that was super important to me to get going.
Definitely lots of good ideas, Kathy. There's a question in the chat that I think you are fully prepared to answer if I can put you in the hot seat. There's a question about people taking your content and misusing it or misinterpreting it. So think of hot button topics, which I feel like you have touched on in your books so far. What are your thoughts for this question?
So I'm going to ask for a little clarity on what do you mean by people taking it and using it?
Ooh. Tanya, are you willing to elaborate? Potential of harmful backlash or people using my content negatively is what she wrote in the chat on social media.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, like, there are a lot of times where, you are, if you're just kind of like scrolling and stuff and you see like the start of a video and then it stops and then there's someone who is like making, comments or something on something that someone else had posted as if they were like a content expert or whatever. And some of them you can see and you're like, wow, that guy is like a complete doofus. Like, why are they even speaking of that? And you could see why someone want to correct them. But then there are other things that I think are just kind of like, kind of like mean spirited, or people are just purposely controversial, or they're just trying to kind of maybe ride someone else's coattails. I don't know. So like, it's just so nerve wracking. And then like with AI and everything going on now, like I don't even have Instagram. Like I'm just on like Facebook for cat videos and, like,
yeah,
like that's, so I don't know if you can give any feedback on that.
I can say that I was very afraid of that happening. And so all three are copyrighted with the US Copyright Office. So I definitely would recommend that. If you're self-publishing, then you probably need to go that extra step to do that. But that doesn't stop people, right? And so there's a whole lot there, oh my goodness, that I can't control. And so because of that, I kind of had to let some of that go. I've learned about what I can do to protect my content the best that I can, and have done those things. But at some point, you can't stop people from doing those kind of things. I'll say that the thing that I worried about the most was when I wrote the book about being scammed, I purposely included several of the ways that scammers, the tactics that they use. They have so many. So I couldn't even cover all the different ways that scammers, take advantage of people. Excuse me. And I really worried that that would be used by someone as a playbook on how to scam people. But I settled myself down on that, and maybe I'm wrong, but again, I can't control this, is that scammers already know all those tactics. I sort of learned it from them, and they train each other, and I know that. And so I kind of had to let go of the pieces that I couldn't control, very much so. Plus, another factor came up for me in that was that the gain, the positive side of sharing that information with a person who has been scammed, and helping them to see, oh my goodness, I didn't have a chance against this person. That gain far outweighed the fear that I had of it being used improperly. And so with that was kind of a big turning point for me to say, okay, I'm putting it out there. So
much resonates there. Yeah. So I know we have lots of other thoughts, Kathy, and I'm sure you can connect with Tanya on this if she wants to continue the conversation. At this point, I'm going to announce the winner of one of your books, whichever one you all decide, because you have three, which is Shelley. So Shelley is one of our other speakers coming down the line, but Shelley, you are the proud winner of one of Kathy's books. So thank you so much. Next, we have Kristen talking with us about her experience. Thank you, Kathy. Kristen?
Hi. Okay. Well, so I'm Kristen, and wanted to share with you this book that is coming out actually this month. So it's called Addressing Anxiety in Young Learners, A Teacher's Guide to Recognizing Needs and Resolving Behaviors. So this was my first entry into the publishing world, and it was a real gift for me because actually Dr. Vanover, Dr. Sarah Vanover, who wrote the bulk of this book, let's be honest, is my cousin. And so she heard that I was looking to publish, and I'm working on a book that actually is going to be published, I hope, Kara, by the end of this year. So I'm publishing another book through Amazon after, and I can speak to all of you all about all that process because it's been a process. But I wanted to share this book with you too, because this book was a really good entry for me into the publishing world. My cousin has written several books, and so she's kind of a master of knowing how to do this and knowing the world and knowing the language. And I simply didn't. I didn't know any publishers. I didn't know if I needed an agent. I didn't know how to get anybody to be interested in any work I might be able to contribute. And I did not have social media followers, you guys. And I still have a really teeny tiny amount. It's not maybe my forte. So at any rate, I'm working on it. It is a slow and steady process, like somebody said earlier. But so this book is actually about helping teachers recognize anxiety in children when they're in a classroom in young ages. So like my cousin, her son she did not know had anxiety. She just thought maybe he had more defiant behavior, that sort of thing. And she's a specialist in pediatric childcare and that sort of thing. And still, even knowing a lot of what she knew, she didn't recognize it in her own child. And so this book was kind of her answer of like, let me help other professionals in this field recognize when young kids are struggling. And so what she offered for me to get to do, which was super fun for me and really easy, one of the things I would say to any of you is write what you know. I got to write the case studies. And I've been working in the field of pediatric anxiety for years. So I didn't say this at the beginning, but I'm a dance movement therapist by training and a certified eating disorder professional, as well as like I specialize in pediatric anxiety and parent coaching. And so when she called me and said, can you write case studies for pediatrics? I was like, in my sleep, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. And so that's the project that is just coming out this month. The one that's been a little bit more of a bear or a beast for me is my own book. And it will be my first one. And maybe some of you feel this way, but it's kind of been my baby and I've incubated it maybe too long, you guys. Overthought it a bit, that sort of thing. But what it's going to be, it's called The Body as Nature. And so I've worked in the field of eating disorders for years. And as a dance movement therapist, I inherently know that the body contains everything we experience. Much like if you know Bessel van der Kolk's work, The Body Keeps the Score, or Daniel Siegel, how he works with interpersonal biology. When we're looking at those sorts of things in the field of eating disorders, there's often this message of like movement actually can exacerbate the disorder if exercise is a component and moving is a component of the eating disorder. And so I've worked in this field for years of like, you're not supposed to really include the body too much because you don't want to make something worse. So this book I'm working on now is a journal. And it is ideally a call and response between the reader and what I've written. And I'm hoping it's going to land interpersonally. And I hope that the words land and kind of like evoke the body. And so there's a lot of interactive exercises and that sort of thing. And it reminds me a little bit when Kate was talking about her book having some like spirituality and those pieces in it. This has interpersonal biology, dance movement therapy, spirituality, as well as like really traditional modalities of CBT, DBT, ACT, ERP, that sort of thing. And just to speak with you guys a little bit about the publishing process, because Kira, I know you have supported me along the way and you know some of the bumps in the road I've hit. So thank you for including me. I submitted this book to 7 different publishers and I've considered submitting it to more. And I finally, the feedback I got overwhelmingly was 2 things. One, we want to change a little bit of the flavor of your book. We want it to be a little bit more academic. We want it to be a little bit more in this kind of, maybe in a box. And then 2, a lot of publishers said, we don't do like a workbook or a journal kind of thing. We don't want to do that. That's not what we publish. We publish more academic, or we publish more like, a book you're going to read from cover to cover. And I really had this vision for this book that it's like a hardback book that you gift to somebody or to yourself if you want to work on your own body appreciation, just appreciating the body that nature gave you. And so I finally just decided, you know what? I'm just going to do Amazon publishing. And I looked at their different levels of publishing and decided I'm a first-time author. I don't know what I'm doing. So I paid, I didn't just do the KDP is the... Yeah, so I didn't do just the KDP. I did one where I hired some people to actually give me some support and some scaffolding because I just felt so unsure of what I was doing. And it's going beautifully. I don't know what that's going to mean for sales. I don't know what that's going to mean for what this book does in the world. But for somebody who's new in this and I just wanted somebody to be in it with me and not feel like I was writing into a void, which is what it felt like. It's been a good move. And so, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's mostly done. I think it's going to be around 100-ish pages, and there's going to be space in it for people to write what their experience of being in their body and connecting with their body and appreciating the parts they can, and even lamenting and being sad or having loss and grief about the parts that aren't feeling good, if they're ill or if they're, feeling uncomfortable in their body for any reason. So that's where I am, and I'm happy to answer questions about the publishing process or anything else somebody might have.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy you're happy. Like after going all these different ways and seeing what was going to be a fit for your baby to be born.
Yes. Thank you, Christy. I see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other questions for Kristen as she's with us
So
and
I
has
didn't
maybe a
sign with
minute?
anybody. I decided to self-publish on Amazon. And so I haven't signed with anybody. So currently, I mean, they told me one of the things that was cool about Amazon, I was so worried, you all. Like, I feel like I really wanted a traditional publisher to give me a stamp of approval so other therapists would know, like, I've done my homework. And so when I talked with Amazon, they said, at any point in time, if a publisher contacts you or somebody's interested in your book, you can pull it off the market and do it there, with another publisher. So I felt like it was a risk I could take.
Time for one more question. Anyone have one? Put them in the hot seat. What's the level of interaction with your Amazon folks that are helping you? Is it like a weekly check-in, or are they just doing things as you go? Talk to us
It's
about that
really
real quick.
nice. So I can text them, or so we have this. They sign you up for Basecamp, which is like this platform where I have 8 people assigned to help me, which is like, you guys. I mean, nobody was helping me, and I've been writing this in my basement by myself. So it's just really nice, somebody's read something I wrote, even if nobody else reads it. But it's nice because what I will do is I will sit down and I will go through, like, they typeset it, they format it, they help me, like, they want to know what I want for the cover. It's like all that creative control. And then if I say, I don't like this, or I don't like the spacing, or I don't like the editing, or can you help me? I just send them a document on this chat that we have, and then they take it to their writers, and then they bring it back to me in a day or two, all corrected. So that's great. One of the things I did this week, and I didn't know if they would do this because I just didn't know, but I created this like check-in with your body checklist, and it looked really ugly and boring, to be honest. It looked like something you do at your doctor's office, like check the box. And I was like, that is so visually unappealing for a journal. So I said, I don't know if anybody over there can help me, but I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know how to make this look appealing. Can anybody take my checklist and make it appealing? And then they sent it back to me today. So those are the things that, for me, as somebody who's like a first time taking a leap of faith here, that's been really helpful. So I've appreciated it. They get back to me within 24 hours usually.
That's impressive. Yeah, I think you've impressed quite a few people with the structure of your experience. Thank you, Kristen.
Hey, Kara, could I jump in really quick here?
Of course, Rich.
Kristen, what's the name? Because Amazon doesn't create a team and help Kindle Direct Publishing. So is it one of the companies that's named either Amazon Global Publishing or AmazonPublishing.com?
Yeah, Amazon Plus Publishing.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, those folks are not associated with Amazon.com or Kindle Direct Publishing. So don't think you can contact Amazon directly and have them build a team like Kristen has to help you publish your book. So that is an outside company. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So the winner of Kristen's future book that's going to be birthed here soon is Claudia. Congratulations, Claudia. I'll get you connected to Kristen. Thank you, Kristen, for sharing your experience. This has been helpful just to hear about those little pieces that are making us bearable for the publishing process. Next, we have Ilan talking about his book. Thank you, Kristen. Ilan, when you're ready.
Hi, yeah. Well, thank you for organizing all this and all these sort of interesting books and folks. So yeah, I'm Ilan Ben-Ami. I'm a licensed professional counselor, an approved clinical supervisor, and I'm the clinical director of People House. So we're a local nonprofit and we do affordable counseling for the community. So we have 21 interns now and they're all providing counseling and getting their hours, and it's a good resource. My book, Enneagram Patterns and Poetics, A Guide to Understanding Personality. This started, I guess my history with the Enneagram is I have been studying the Enneagram for 15 years, maybe, and teaching it for about 10. And I built Enya app. So it's a free downloadable mobile application, iOS and Android. And there's a free test in there. You can find your type or share with clients. And then there's ways to unlock the full version. But that's always been on sort of democratizing the Enneagram. So just sharing as much information as possible with as many people as possible. And it was I guess like a compilation of all of the Enneagram knowledge I could find that is as cohesive and as organized as possible. So it's sort of, in a way, I think of it as a book in itself, but just organized through an app. So there's about 50,000 words in it. And then those were recently translated to Spanish by my wife. So that was a big project. So it's in both languages. So that's a cool resource. With the book, so that in a way felt like it was honoring the lineage of the Enneagram. It's something that's passed down, right? So each generation has a number of teachers and they share it. And then it's taught in a narrative tradition, really, historically. So the Enneagram, I'm imagining everyone knows what it is here, but it's a system of personality, basically. It says there's 9 motivations for behavior. So it was taught in a narrative tradition in that people would come and listen to stories of type. So I guess eventually I felt like I wanted to express something about the Enneagram that honored that lineage, but also was maybe in an accessible, modernized, holistic language. So this is my attempt to show that actually the whole Enneagram, each part kind of contains the whole, and it's all interconnected. And so it goes linearly through the system in as few words as possible. So it alternates between psychoeducation, written as succinctly as I could, and then poetry to capture something sort of more ethereal. And then there's images throughout, because I wanted to support basically the experience I have when I'm teaching, that there's something very visual about it, and there's something that when you look at a type, you can sort of see or feel aspects of it or understand aspects of it. So yeah, I'm very close to this book. It means a lot to me, and I'm really grateful to be able to share it. So I guess I thought what I would do is just give a quick overview of some of the items in the book, so that you can get a sense of how the structure of the book goes. So so I have these teaching tools. So bring these to classes, and these are, different types, right? And these same sort of images are in the book, and the same sort of colors are in the app, so it's cohesive. So the way that the book goes is it starts with instincts or energy, right? That we're all sort of these instinctual beings. We have our instinctual intelligence. And so that's this pink color that's at the backdrop of all of the images in the book. It's the way to teach that, people now that the Enneagram is kind of in more sort of pop culture, people know of the 9 types and they might know their type. Clients might come in and talk about it, or maybe you know your type. But actually underneath that, what isn't talked about as much is the subtypes, or the instinctual types. So I think that actually that indicates a bit more of who we are and our habitual responses and our sort of capacities, what we're drawn towards. So it helps clients identify first, how they form what I call in the book energy exchanges. And so we want to find ways that nourish us, ways we nourish ourselves, the relationships that are most important to us, the communities that we build. Those are all places that we give energy and we receive energy from. So then the 9 types, so that's instinct, and the 9 types is sort of a bit more of sophisticated way to work with personality, or our strategies for moving through the world. They're a little bit more nuanced. They're all built through the same basic components. So this is sort of a bottom-up system you could think of. We have gut instinct moves into sort of a gut intelligence, the somatic intelligence of the body. So that's, sensate awareness. We're doing work with clients on experiencing somatically, listening to someone mention, what the wisdom of the body is saying. And then we have heart. So, feelings, expression of self, aesthetics, perception, heart intelligence. And then we have head. So you could go top down or bottom up, but head, reasoning, thinking, ideating. So basically the idea with the Enneagram is to help folks see how are you showing up in all 3 of these centers. And that's where actually balance occurs, when you are able to be present in all 3. So when you look at an image in the book, this is 5, for example. It has little bits of detail here of these 3 colors. And the idea is that, those actually would speak to elements of the pattern. So each of the 9 types is a way of kind of weaving all of these together. And what I think is hopefully helpful about this book as well is that you already know the 9 types, you know, however your sort of modality is or what you practice, you know these patterns of personality. That's why it's called Enneagram patterns, because I think we have an understanding of them. Maybe we have different labels or ways we conceptualize them or work with clients, but you already know them. So the content is sort of written to speak to the archetype, really, how all of the 9 types are within us and how all the instinctual patterns are within us. So that is a little overview on basically the first half of the book. Goes, you know, really compact ways of expressing all this. And then there's a section for a poem on each of the 9 types. And then there's, you know, part 3 is more abstract poems. So about things that surround personality. So like conditioning or habituation or relationships or whatever it is. That really personality system gets reductionistic when people take a typology and put it on people, which we all know that people are way more complicated than any of these 9 types. So that tries to sort of paint a broader picture. And then the last section is maybe closest to Ennea app, and that it's an organization of all the content that existed before in one spot. How am I doing on time?
Got
5
like
minutes?
2 minutes left. Do you want to
2
speak
minutes.
to? Do you want to speak to the publishing process?
Yes. So I, my tip was basically to find some YouTube channels. I mentioned one, MK Williams, just a channel that spoke to me about, if you're going to go the self-publishing route, about do's and don'ts, because I was just in the creative phase, you know, for a long time, and I had written at least the first rough draft, and I was finally, you know, ready to start to look at publishing, and I learned that I had to reformat the whole thing. So Pages has an option. I work on Mac, so Pages has an option that says book, template for a book. Well, that's not a template for a book. It's in a size that no publisher publishes in, which is mind-blowing. So then I had to and because mine has images embedded in every page, it was a nightmare. I was ready to cry. So if I could do it over again, I would tell former self, actually start with some of the boring stuff, which maybe is a little bit opposite of Kathy's advice, but maybe do a little bit of both, because that ended up. And then I also tried to do Ingram Spark and KDP at the same time. And I would say, don't do that. And you know, unless you have experience, just do KDP, get your files as clean as possible. It's, you know, for the beast that Amazon is, they are good at streamlining. And then if you want to go elsewhere, you'll have really clean files and covers and all that.
So valuable.
Yeah. What?
I know we talked about it behind the scenes of like, oh my God, this is not intuitive. So yes, everyone's sharing really a wealth of information. I can't emphasize enough. These authors have learned from their own challenges, dare I say, even our own mistakes. So I hope you're all soaking this up. And obviously you can reach out to any of these authors on specific questions for them. The winner of Elan's book is Jenny Robbins. So Jenny, make sure I have an email for you. I don't think we've met before. So Jenny, winner of Elan's book. Thank you, Elan. Next person we have.
Can I ask a question?
Very quickly, Claudia. We're a little behind.
Elan, your book sounds wonderful. What is your last name?
Oh, Benami. I updated my Zoom profile, but it's not showing there, but no. Benami.
Okay. Yeah. And in some books, I'm called an artist. I'm a 4. In other books, I'm called a neurotic depressive. I think I'm both. It all depends on the book.
Is there a question?
That was not a question.
Oh, just the question was my last name.
No, it was the last name was the question.
Yeah. Well, I just recorded an audio version, so I can, who won the book, I can
Jenny
give it in whatever.
Yep, I've got her email for you.
Yeah.
Yep, we're all set. Thank you. All right, Shelley, you are next.
All right. Hello, everybody. I love hearing all the different ways that people have brought their books to life. And sounds like I have another experience that will add to all these different journeys. But my book is Insight is 2020, How to Trust Yourself to Protect Yourself from Narcissistic Abuse and Toxic Relationships, which is a complete mouthful there. I wrote this book after many years of just seeing people struggle with narcissistic abuse, really pathological abuse from, cluster B disorders and psychopathic behaviors, and also some personal experience. And I realized that there is a lot of misinformation out there about it. And I know right now there's kind of, thanks to social media, TikTok, narcissism seems to be a hot topic. And I think there's a blessing and a curse with it, because and whether it's narcissism or any other, mental health issues that seem to make their way into social media. But, a lot of misinformation can be shared, and a lot of good information can be shared at the same time. So I think it's really helped give voice and just like a way to identify what's happening to me for so many people that are involved in these types of relationships with, somebody that has cluster B traits or a full-blown diagnosis. So I decided to do a book that was kind of a mix of research, looking into current research and evidence-based practices and working with it. But it was also a decision to share some personal and vulnerable experiences with narcissistic abuse myself. And so it's kind of a mix of that. It's really written for anybody that is wanting to protect themselves from this, and for people who are experiencing it, whether they know, they would actually call it narcissistic abuse or just identify with, a toxic relationship. So it really covers, what does the relationship look like? What are some of the, DSM characteristics of these disorders? And more importantly, it talks about, I kind of break it down into what I call internal and external red flags. So the external red flags help them identify like what's looked for in your partner, such as traits of narcissism. And then the internal red flags are really more important. It's about how to listen to yourself, how to trust yourself, and to how to look for the very unique symptoms and trauma reactions that survivors can have, which are often overlooked by most of us mental health professionals, because their level of trauma can look very different than like traditional PTSD or even CPTSD. So I kind of put it into an easy to understand format to speak directly to survivors, but I think there's information in there that could be helpful for the clinical population as well, just to understand it. I work closely with the board of MPD, Psychopathy and Survivor Treatment Research and Education, and Sandra Brown, who's really done a lot of research in this area, and she wrote the foreword for my book. So it is a passion project for me. As far as how I published, I had a couple of friends who had been working with a program called the Creator Institute, and it basically it's a writing program that basically walks you through how to write your book. They provide editing. You have different editors throughout the whole writing process, but you retain, create full control of the book. And then once you complete your book, they help you hand it over to a hybrid publisher called New Degree Press. And so I had a wonderful experience. I wrote the book from start to finish in a year. It was a very intensive program, very time intensive, but it kept me motivated and it helped me know exactly how to write. I love writing. I love to creatively write, but the technicalities of writing, I mean, they work with all kinds of different genres, but, you know, so they'll place you in a group, you know, in a peer cohort with people in your genre. So, you know, it's a very specific process that they walked us through, and it really kept me on top of the writing because I could drag that on forever, I think. And then as far as moving into the actual publishing process, they were incredible. I mean, they did all of the technical things, but I got to have the, you know, creative control and feedback. Like, you know, for example, working with their creative team to make the cover, I could give them some ideas. They made it. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. And then when it's published, you know, now it's published on Amazon and Audible, and I get the royalties and keep complete control over it. So it was a really good program, but very intensive at the same time. So that's kind of the gist of it. So I'll hand it over to you, Kara.
You've got a couple questions here. People are saying they love the cover of your book, and some folks have heard the audio version. A question that you might be able to speak to is from Amber here that says, how do you narrow down the type of audience you're writing for or to? She's struggling with the format. I want to cater to a wider range of readers or learners. What thoughts do you have as a published author?
I think you have to decide, like, you know, who do you want to speak to and what your niche is? I mean, you know, what some people have talked about, well, or maybe I read this, but for me, I work with survivors. I really wanted to help them have something to easily understand. I could have easily written this for therapists as well, but I think it's just a decision that you have to make. And remember, like, if you go broad and try to reach everybody, that's usually not a good strategy in marketing. It's, you know, you focus on where you want to go, what you feel most comfortable with, and maybe, you know, where your gifts of knowledge lie. And I would say choose your audience from that perspective.
Yeah, I feel like what you're tapping into is what we learn as therapists too, which is if we go so broad that we could serve anyone, that's kind of a red flag. So like my thought, just to piggyback off of yours, Shelley, is you know, you can write a book for an audience, then you can write a companion book or a similar one with a different flavor for a different audience. So there might be one for clinicians, one for survivors, one for somebody else, but it might be separate so that the marketing feels very clear to what you shared. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think even just writing this, I mean, I've specialized in this area for many years prior to writing the book, but now there's so many different opportunities that I'm branching out, doing, you know, stuff with, you know, therapists in different ways, consulting trainings and things like that. So you can really broaden it from there, but I would say get specific and make a decision to start with.
Folks are asking what the program was called that you utilized.
Yeah, it's called the Creator Institute. There's a professor named Eric Custer who is from Georgetown University that runs it. I think the guy must be a little manic because he is like bursting with creative energy and ideas. He's a genius. He's written like a bajillion books. Tried and true program. I highly recommend it. And then New Degree Press is the publisher that they work with.
Thank you. That's helpful. All right. So as we transition, the winner of Shelley's book is actually Kate Daigle, who's our next speaker. So that's funny how that landed. So second Kate of our presenters and authors. Thank you so much, Shelley. And Kate, you have the floor. Actually, I don't see Kate in here all of a sudden. Kate, are you there? Let me check my attendance. Oh no, he's not here. Okay, well, any other questions for Shelley before we move to our next presenter then? I'm just going to move you all out of alignment here. Let's move on to Dr. Jeff. I can see Kate, but can't hear her. Am I just missing her? Hold on. No, separate Kate. There's two Kates in our lineup, and I don't see the Kate we need. All right, so Dr. Jeff, I'm going to have you take the floor next, please. Thank you, Shelley.
Okay, let me make sure I'm unmuted there. All right, thanks, Kara, for putting this together. It's been kind of a neat little experience here, hearing from different authors and therapists and experts in different areas. I think I've recorded a nugget or two myself here. My name is Jeff Riggenbaugh. I come to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I am the author of the book Disarming High Conflict Personalities, dealing with the 8 most difficult people in your life before you burn out. And my background is actually in cognition and personality. I did postdoctoral training at the Beck Institute of Cognitive Therapy and Research with Dr. Aaron Beck, his daughter Judy, who's the president of the institute now. And I did it specifically to develop our treatment program at our hospital and outpatient clinics for treating personality disorders. And over the course of 15 years, we treated over 500 specifically patients with borderline personality disorder. So that's really my clinical background, my clinical area of expertise. It's what my first, 6 publications were on. But a few years ago here, I got sick. I took medical leave and I ended up having a kidney transplant. And during that initial time of my medical leave, I used it to get a little bit of different sort of training. And I became a certified speaker trainer coach with the John Maxwell team. And so pretty quickly, as I began to kind of rub shoulders with these corporate folks and do these different types of trainings, I kind of had my own aha moment and that hit me. And that was that organizations can have personality disorders as well. And so I just realized that these difficult personalities kind of show up in different settings, and everybody kind of had their own code language for it. So I'm used to using language like, symptomatology and functional impairment and patient dropout rates and cognitive conceptualization of the narcissist and this kind of language that sounds crazy to everybody on the outside. But in the corporate world, I kept hearing things like culture problem, employee engagement and retention problems, hostile work environment complaints. In the education setting and at some of the educator conferences I've presented at, just hearing people talk about, classroom management problems, behavior management problems, and really even learning how personality-based communication problems were affecting test scores and ultimately funding that school districts were getting, and these kind of things that we wouldn't think about personality affecting necessarily. And in faith-based organizations, you hear people talk about unforgiving spirit and stirring up dissension and these kinds of things. And in personal life, I think Shelley mentioned the terms narcissistic abuse, toxic relationships. And I say that in air quotes because those things obviously mean different things to different people. But it just sort of hit me that, all right, this is the same thing. Okay, it's difficult personalities causing problems for people in different areas of life. And so while I was sort of on my hiatus out of the clinical world there, I thought, how can I put something together here that can be helpful for non-clinical people for dealing with these difficult personalities? So I sort of researched all of the non-clinical personality inventories out there that I could find. I mean, I looked at things like MMPI, Myers-Briggs. I looked at Enneagram. I looked at some strengths-based stuff. But the one that I found that I ended up thinking was the most congruent with what I wanted to do was the DISC. And I thought the DISC was, number one, the most consistent with cognitive science in comparison with all of the others. And number two, it was the most helpful for both understanding ourselves and also understanding others pretty quickly. And that's really the goal, is to understand other people so we can communicate more effectively with them. And so I got a little bit of additional training. I became a certified behavior consultant with Personality Insights to train on the DISC, and put together my material using my cognitive science background to inform it, but using this user-friendly sort of language that a lot of people were already familiar with. So for those of you that aren't familiar with, the D in the DISC is for the dominant type. The I is for what they call the inspiring type. The S is what they call the social type. And then the C is what they call the cautious type. And so my 8 different types of difficult personalities are really just overdeveloped versions of those 4 styles. So my two overdeveloped versions of the D are what I call the bully and the con artist. Okay, in clinical lingo, these are people with narcissistic and antisocial traits. My two overdeveloped versions of the I are what I call the drama mama and the victim. Drama mama is somebody with histrionic traits. Victim is really a little more complex. It's really a combination of somebody with dependent, narcissistic, and maybe some borderline traits. My two overdeveloped versions of the S were what I call the landmine and the yes man or the yes ma'am. And those are people with borderline and dependent personality traits. And then finally, my two overdeveloped versions of the C are what I call the overanalyzer and the skeptic. And so those are people with OCPD, perfectionistic personality styles, and then people with more paranoid personality traits. So those are, in essence, the 8 different types of high conflict people that I talk about in the book, and the content, the course that I've created that goes along with it. And it really helps people in all 4 settings, workplace settings, school settings, faith-based settings, and in your personal life, how to deal with some kind of difficult personality that's just making life a little more difficult than it needs to be. And I walk them through my 5 magic questions. Question number 1 is, who am I? So we have people be able to take their own sort of disc, learn their own style blend. Question number 2 is, who are they? So we want to help people really quickly identify. Again, I think that's a strength of the disc. We can pretty quickly identify what style somebody else is. Question number 3 then is, who am I to them? Okay, so that's what I call the empathy question. Putting ourselves in their shoes, knowing their personality styles, their beliefs that are a part of that. How are they going to view us? Question number 4 then is, who are they to me? So that's what I call the awareness question, recognizing our own personality, our own beliefs and biases that come along with those. How do those impact how we view others? And then question number 5 is sort of where it all comes together, the secret sauce. How do I need to adapt how I come across to that person based upon who I am and who they are in order to speak their language? I think this is helpful for any personality styles, really dealing with anybody, but particularly to get those more high conflict people to, we say, do the things stop doing the things we don't want them to do and start doing the things that we do want them to do. And so that is the gist of the book and the online course that goes along with it. Probably the easiest way to get it is my Amazon website is clinicaltoolboxset.com. It's clinicaltoolboxset.com. It's got this book as well as my previous publications as well. The website's just jeffriggenbaugh.com. I didn't really come prepared to talk about the process. I didn't realize I was necessarily supposed to do that, but I'll say a word or two about that here quickly. Like somebody early on in the process, I was originally approached about writing the first book, and it was by Pessy. And I was speaking for them at the time. I was speaking in 100 cities a year. They said, hey, you're out there speaking on this CBT. We really think you should write a book around it. I'm like, no, I don't want to write a book. I don't have any desire to write a book. 6 months later, they came back and asked me again. I said, no, I don't have any desire to write a book. And then one day I just got on a plane after a conference and I looked around, and the guy next to me in the plane was just watching some insane YouTube video. And something just hit me. I looked around and I thought, what a waste of time. I could use my plane time to write this book Pessy wants me to write. And so that first book, I wrote not a single word of it, not on an airplane. And that ended up being my best selling of all the books that I've written. Now that's the one that's sold over 100,000 copies and is used in a lot broader range of setting and those kind of things. But it really kind of taught me the principle that I think one of the tips that I shared was just in terms of, I guess the plane was sort of a built-in time for me to write it. But then in subsequent books, I didn't have that built-in plane time. So I really had to commit to a time. And so I think committing to a regular time, for me, it was daily. It may not be able to be daily for everybody, but commit to a regular time that you can do nothing but that. And maybe Maybe we need to do our own cognitive therapy. We need to deal with our own excuses. Well, it's okay not to work on it today because I got this come up with my kid or my spouse or my other job. Or really learn to protect that time and really commit to it and really be disciplined and gradually, slowly, kind of one step at a time, you can take that one bite at a time to eat that proverbial large elephant. And eventually you see your work come to fruition. So be disciplined, commit to it, and set a time and stick to it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff. I know you have multiple books for people to check out, and I'll try and put, I'll encourage you to put your website here in the chat if you're willing. The winner of one of Dr. Jeff's books is actually Silver Linings Counseling, which I can't remember who this is. So message me so I can get your email and connect you to Dr. Jeff for this. I think we're going to try again for Kate. She said that she might have her technical stuff figured out. So Kate, can you let me know if you're, yep, you're on. All right, there we go.
Sorry, I had my AirPods in, technology. So hi, everyone. I'm Kate Daigle. I know many of you, so it's good to see some of your faces. This is my book. It's called The Clinical Guide to Fertility, Eating Disorders, and Motherhood. I published it in 2019, and it's a comprehensive guide to different case studies. So I interviewed some, confidentially interviewed people that I asked out on Facebook and everywhere, like, anybody have any experience with fertility issues and eating disorders? And people came out of the woodwork. I thought this is a personal passion project for me, as is with many of the others here. I overcame my own eating disorder in my late teens, early 20s. And when it came time for my husband and I to want to have a family, we had some fertility issues. And I didn't know at the time anyone who had kind of an intersection with those two situations. And I, of course, went straight into like a shame spiral of, what did I do to my body? Did I really hurt my fertility through the eating disorder that I had? And it was kind of a crisis moment for me. Luckily, I went on to have a healthy pregnancy with my daughter, who's now 7. But through that process, I became really curious about this. And I tried to do some research, and this was in 2017. There wasn't a lot of material out there around infertility, eating disorders, postpartum issues, depression, anxiety, and shame, which was kind of a core experience for a lot of these women and men. So I put together a proposal to try to learn more and educate people. I just kind of randomly sort of proposed to the Eating Recovery Center conference that year, and they accepted my proposal, and we're really excited to learn more about it. So I spoke at their conference that year, and this was before my book came to fruition at all. And after the conference, I was outreached by Routledge Publishing Company, who said that they were there and saw my presentation and said that they don't have any books on that topic either. And would I be interested in writing a proposal to them to publish a book of that nature? And I hadn't really even thought of writing a book, but it all kind of just happened, I guess, organically. So I did, and they accepted it. And the book, as I said, is a comprehensive guide. So there's it is geared mostly to therapists and different. So I interviewed a lot of different medical professionals too, doctors, nurses, PAs, dietitians, about their experience with this topic. And so it goes in different sections. So the first section is conception and the differences. So it's interviewing women who've either had eating disorders and are trying to have a family, or currently have an eating disorder and either get pregnant purposely or not on purpose. And so the stories that you read through on this book and the chapters are women who have gone through both of those experiences, whether it's conception, and then talk about the complications medically, emotionally, with that kind of a process of learning that you're pregnant, and then the stages of pregnancy and how that can be affected by an eating disorder, whether it's present or in the past. and then a big section on postpartum, which many women are more at risk of relapse and of both their eating disorder as well as postpartum anxiety and depression. So it looks a lot about the coping and attachment styles based on different experiences of women through their lives. I talk a lot about the medical community too, and how they don't seem to know a lot about this topic either. I think in the years since, there's been a lot more research, and I've done actually some speaking around the country and a lot on Zoom, but around this topic because there's a lot of interest in it. So there's a lot of, there's some guides to how to, if you are in this population, how to approach this with your medical team, and advice for medical professionals on how they could educate themselves or approach these very sensitive topics with women and men who are going through fertility and eating disorder issues. And then the last part is trying to wrap up the shame that can be through all of this, as I experienced, and many people that I talk to have experienced, of how their value and drive to have a family could impact their eating disorder history or current eating disorder, can impact that value, and that becoming a very shameful experience. So interwoven in the book are exercises for therapists to do with clients, as well as questions for consideration to think about if you are working with clients in this population, to help them find self-acceptance and self-compassion through this very complicated journey. So ultimately, I did write this book through Routledge, and I hired a writing coach as well, because they were pretty hands-off. So I was like, I'm on my own timeline. Well, they gave me a deadline, but I had to kind of get it done in a year. And I think Shelley or other people were like, you have to hold yourself accountable. So like Dr. Jeff, I found a specific time every week to write, and it didn't always go well, but I was like, Thursday mornings from this time to this time, you need to write. So I tried that, and my coach was holding me responsible. So I would recommend a writing coach if you're kind of doing this on your own, so to speak. And then the publishing process was really pretty simple through them, and they've been marketing it, and I get a little bit of royalties from them every couple times a year. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Kate. I know we're like on down to the wire, so I appreciate you just being like super efficient.
I got everything out there. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm going to encourage the people on this call to reach out to Kate with questions, so we don't have a lot of time to indulge in those questions right now. Congratulations to Christy. Christy, you've received it. You're going to be connected to Kate here as the recipient of the raffle for her book. We have one last speaker with us, so hang in there. Thank you so much, Kate. And last but not least, Catherine.
Yes, hi, Kara, and thanks for bringing us all together. It's amazing how many different journeys everybody has. My name is Catherine Fabrizio. I'm a licensed counselor from Raleigh, North Carolina. Been in practice for about 35 years, and I wrote the self-published book, The Good Daughter Syndrome. Help for empathic daughters of narcissistic, borderline, or difficult mothers trapped in the good daughter role. So maybe I'll start a little bit, and I won't go over time, but start a little bit with what is the good daughter syndrome. So you have a daughter who's attuned and sensitive and empathetic, and you have a mother who's difficult. Now that difficulty could be a full-blown personality disorder, narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, or she could just be plain difficult, right? She could have traits of those disorders, or be difficult because of a discrete traumatic event in her life. And if it's pervasive and persistent enough, then she would qualify for personality disorder. So as we know, children are born wired for connection. And I don't know that there's a difference, but I know women and I know daughters, I know myself. I started to see in my practice so many daughters who knew they should set healthy boundaries, stand up to their mothers, and they just couldn't bring themselves to do it. And then I'm a psychodynamic psychotherapist. So after working with a number of these daughters, I discovered that, of course, they're unconscious mandates that I put in the form of, I call 4 different traps: the never good enough trap, the guilt trap, self-doubt trap, and mixed message trap. And at the core of all these traps are what I call an unconscious agreement that their survival brain made throughout development to compensate for mom's limitations in her parenting. And I know I'm applying a very broad brush here, but anyway, that was my story. So I guess initially, probably 5 years ago, I started blogging about it. And then, I mean, it's all a story of being pretty much self-taught. So I tried to rank in my blog posts. And so I would write and rewrite and try to make it more appealing, more compelling. So I got better at it, and I blogged for Psych Central and goodtherapy.org, kind of, I guess, taught myself a little bit how to write, and then took about a year to write a book that just wanted to come out of me. So, and then I spent probably a year approaching publishers, and like a lot of you have talked about, they all want something different. And in retrospect, it kind of helped me hone my message. It helped make the writing tighter. Nobody was interested. Everybody said, "What is your platform?" And at the time, I didn't have much of a platform. So I went ahead with self-publishing, and I worked with David Wogan at Author Imprints, and he helps you create an imprint. So in Fear and Trembling, and also let me back up a little bit. I hired, I would say, a very expensive editor. Because I personally can't write anything without, anybody else looking at it and it come out to be a good product. So worked with her and whinnied down the book to 274 pages. And so anyway, long story, a little bit shorter. So I put the book out on Amazon, and David Wogan formats it and does all the technical work. And it's done pretty well. I've been very, very surprised, pleasantly so. It has a lot of good reviews. Also sent it off to Kirkus and Forward because I thought I need some credibility. Publishers weren't giving me credibility, and they reviewed it favorably, and Forward gave me 5 stars. And so I thought, oh, I could take a deep breath. Yeah, so it's up on Amazon. It has been since March. I get to keep all the royalties. Tandor Media approached me about creating an audiobook. It's kind of like Henny Penny. Yeah, now you want to give me credibility now that it's doing well. And so I looked into Findaway Voices, where you can hire a narrator and you can self-publish your own audiobook. And I'm like, yeah, keep your upfront money. I'm going to do it myself. I did the first thing myself. I'm going to do this myself. And guess what? I'm going to keep all the profits. So far, I haven't finished doing the audiobook, but so far it's been a pretty good experience. But that's amazing because Tandor was going to, they offered $1,000. And then I get 3% of the royalties. So it's a wild, wild west out there, isn't it? I mean, everybody has a different story, and I think there is no shortcut. So anyway, that's my story. I didn't choose to self-publish, but I really wanted to get the material out there, and I'm glad I did. And I'm not a technical person, and I would refer David Wogan at Author Imprint if that's a direction anybody wants to go in.
Thank you, Catherine. I love hearing your story because I've read your book and was a huge fan. So if anyone liked, let's see, what did I compare it to? If anyone liked Will I Ever Be Good Enough? Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers, you like that kind of vibe, Catherine is like the modern new version of that. And I mean that with complete respect and like lots of compliments because I loved that book. That book was phenomenal. And your book it's something I've been talking to clients about for months now and having read it back in March. So if you have not checked out Catherine's book, I highly recommend, personal recommendation, highly recommend you look at that and see how it can be implemented with your clients. Congrats to Amber for being our winner of Catherine's book. So I'll make sure you all are connected. I know we're running short on time, so I want to introduce you all for the last little bit to our last sponsor, who is part of what made this possible. So I'm getting lots of good feedback in the chat. I want to introduce you to Chris as our second and final sponsor as we wrap things up today. Thank you, Catherine. Chris, are you with us?
I am. Can you guys hear me just fine? Hello, are you there? Okay, cool. No, thank you guys for putting this all on. Seriously, Kara, this has been really, really wonderful. And I'm hoping that there's been so many people with the questions, this stuff, that it's really given them some really great stuff to think about. And I'm so honored to be able to be a part of this as a sponsor. And I know I just want to kind of highlight my Facebook group that I have, the Self-Publishing for Therapists, Coaches, and Consultants. I think you're going to put out like a PDF thing for people to have. There'll be a QR code on there that people can definitely check out. If not, you can always search for Self-Publishing for Therapists, Coaches, and Consultants. But no, this is a great event. I'm really excited about this because I know there's so many people, like when I put the group together, because where do I start? What do I do? How do I even do any of this? And to have a platform where you don't have to do it by yourself. You know, it's a way of being able to have community around, ask questions, this stuff. And even if you have books, I do have like a promo day that you can promote out anything on Wednesdays. However, for people that have books, you can promote them anytime you want. Just put them all on there. Questions, this stuff too. So I just invite everyone to kind of check that out. But a little bit about me. My name is Chris Rhino Swenson. I'm right here in Colorado, although I'm out in the northeast corner in the Plains area, so it's not as beautiful as some areas of Colorado. But I've written a couple different books. My first one that I wrote, I just did it to see how to do it. Like, I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to do it. And that one's turned out to be like my best-selling book. I didn't realize that the book itself is one thing, but where it leads to, like more clients, speaking engagements, all of that stuff. And I was blown away by a lot of that. I wrote another book, and currently I'm working on one right now, actually. And it's called Awaken Your Inner Rhino, with the subtitle of Reconnect to Your Source of Power, Love, and Peace. And I'm excited about that. This one's probably more like my baby. So with that. But no, I just wanted to kind of come on. And if people really want to kind of know some what to do, where to start, things like that, some different ideas on marketing, there's a lot of different stuff that's in the group. I'm also going to start putting together some upcoming workshops, webinars, whatever you want to call them, to be able to kind of help with people do that. And I just finished up working with Ernesto. People know who he is or not, but and he really telling me that you've got to do these retreats. And so I'm looking at putting together kind of a writing retreat at some point. So when that does come, a lot of the details will be in the group. So a lot of different fun stuff that's coming from that. So definitely just trying to check it all out, the Self-Publishing for Therapists, Coaches, and Consultants. But thank you so much for Kara for putting this on. Honestly, this has been, I think, very, very valuable. Like, this is really cool. It's like having a multiple podcast in one couple hours. So
right, like a crash course. Thank you, Chris, for that. So Chris's information's in the Dropbox I just put in the chat for all of you. I'm going to be able to share the video with all of our wonderful authors and sponsors, and I will make it public on our YouTube channel so you can come back, refresh, watch it again, listen again. But yeah, Chris has a wonderful community for people who are looking for connection, support, learn from other people's experiences. This is one way to do that. His community is another fabulous way to do that. So I do plan to do this kind of event once a year, maybe twice a year, because people are putting out awesome books. So I did also put a link in the chat for those of you who are like, hey, I have another book I'm working on, want to talk about it next year. I'm looking at March for the next one. So would love to see some familiar faces and celebrate those of you who were with us today as maybe published authors next year. Yay! So on that note, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate you being here. I respect your time, so we're going to sign off, but I hope you'll stay in touch and let us know how we can support you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kara.